now since I first heard about it. I have licenses and different tenancies that I have. And I was trying to figure out like how would I explain Copilot to somebody as we sort of talk about the broad aspect and narrow our way into the focus of today's topic, which is being branded as Copilot Security or Security Copilot and how it integrates into Microsoft Defender XDR. So the first thing I realized as I'm deep diving on all these topics and working with this product, Copilot is really an umbrella term at this point. If I said, oh, I work with Microsoft Copilot, well, for sure, you're going to be working with Microsoft's implementation of a large language model artificial intelligence engine with one or more of their products. So that's that, but that can be any number of different products in any number of different ways. Much in the same way you might say, I work with Microsoft. That's not quite as detailed as saying I work with Microsoft Outlook, or I work with Microsoft Excel, or I worked with SharePoint Online. There's more specificity in what we do in our job roles. So I wanted to kind of go over the idea first that think of Copilot as an umbrella term. So if you talk to somebody and say, oh, I work with Azure, you know, there's a lot of things in Azure. There's literally thousands and thousands of things that you could be doing that would fall under the umbrella term of as I work in Azure. And Copilot is very much the same way. Now, what I want to do, if I can, is I want to spend a couple minutes and try and coagulate that into some objects we can talk about and mean something as we work our way towards Copilot security. The first thing is Microsoft has essentially, at the present time, because this is definitely a moving, advancing product, it separates it into two main categories. Ones that fall under personal use, even though you very much might be using these personal use categories in your work on a day-to-day business. But they break it into 5 subcategories for personal use. Let's take a look over here at the Microsoft Pro plans and pricing. Okay, so this is Microsoft Pro plans and pricing. I'm going to go ahead and copy this and paste it into the chat in case you want to go there. You can also do a search for that. And I found this to be incredibly handy here. So right here, we have a column that says for personal use. And over here, we have one that says for organizations. So what's up on the slide right now are the categories under personal use. And I'm going to kind of go through those pretty quickly and then narrow our way down into what we're covering today. So the first one is just Copilot, and if you open up Copilot or click on any of the Copilot icons, typically if you're using a browser or if you have it on the desktop, it will open up something like this and make some recommendations of prompts, things you might enter into the prompt window to begin your interaction or session with Copilot. There's also a Copilot app. It was unclear to me whether or not the app for the professional or enterprise version of Copilot is different from the one for personal use. I haven't been able to find that. If it turns out there is, I apologize. As far as I know, the same app applies and they use when you authenticate what licenses you have assigned to you for that. There's also something called Microsoft Copilot Pro. So essentially, they're giving away Copilot and you get a certain number of features. And we're just gonna see this everywhere we go. So if I go back over to my demo machine here and I open up just a blank browser tab, I'm gonna see that I have this open Copilot. If I click on that, it is gonna be interested to see who I'm currently authenticated as. And right now, in this use case, I am authenticated with the user who does have a Microsoft 365 license. So I don't have like this free version of Copilot. If I right click on the bottom of my screen and I say open in a new private window, and I go to, do a search for, I just say like office.com or something. And then I open a new tab from here, I don't really see that Copilot option, even though I am actually using Edge. So it's a little bit unclear right now how it's accessing that and when it starts to give it away. right now they're just saying, I just went to office.com and they're like, try Copilot. Like there it is. But I would have to authenticate. So at some level, they are giving away the free version, but on a personal level, to actually be able to use the paid for the pro version, you can get a license for $20 a month. So those are kind of the personal side of the house. They have Copilot that integrates directly with Edge. It's kind of like an add-in at this time. And then they have Copilot for Windows. Copilot for Windows, I think, is just, and I'm sorry that some of the stuff I don't know because it's not quite coagulated yet into like, this is what this is. But Copilot for Windows actually feels like just how they integrate Copilot for Windows. And if you have the pro version, you might get more features than if you had just the free version. Excuse me, a little bit sick here. All right, so that is Copilot, the personal Copilot. And the next thing I want to talk about is Copilot for the enterprise. And that's going to be for the people in this webinar. Most of us are going to be using some version of Copilot for the enterprise, which requires some level of an enterprise license. And right now, I could identify 11 different products, and I had to go to a couple different sources for this. So when I was getting ready for this webinar, I went to Copilot. I said, what are your available enterprise SKUs where I'd actually have to pay an additional subscription fee to get some particular set of features? And he gave me 7. And then I also used Claude.ai, asked the same question, and Claude.ai is all, oh, you may want to ask Copilot, but it gave me a list of 5, 2 of which weren't on my Copilot list. I went back to Copilot and said, what about these? Like, oh yeah, that's right. All right, I was able to come up with 11, and definitely what we're covering in this class, or in this webinar, excuse me, is in this 11. So let's take a look over back on that Copilot pricing page. And now this is where we're going to focus in on more stuff we would use in the enterprise. And the SKUs currently that you can find on this page are under the sub-navigation organizations. And here's where you'll see Microsoft 365 Copilot. Since this is Microsoft 365 Copilot and its integration with the XDR product or the security product, you would think that that's the product. It's not. The Microsoft 365 Copilot product is more focused on working directly with the Office applications and some of the other products that you get with the Microsoft 365 license. Now you see the download the app. Again, I did not see any difference between the enterprise app and the personal app. And then you've got these subcategories that we're going to talk about, and I kind of dedicated a slide to each one. You have Microsoft Copilot Studio. This is where you can work with the prompt experience, and without code, you can actually write your own chatbots and deploy them to things like Microsoft Teams. It's super cool. Then you've got where we are in this, where we're going to land today and spend the rest of the day once I get here, which is Microsoft Security Copilot. And they have a couple others. It's very exciting what they have announced for Microsoft Copilot in Azure. What we're going to see today is there's 2 ways to integrate Microsoft Copilot with Microsoft Defender XDR. The first way is an Azure-centric way, where you go into Azure and you create a resource group, and then you create an object, which is the engine. It's called a capacity that drives a Security Copilot. The second way is to go to the new securitycopilot.microsoft.com portal, and then you kind of go through a wizard on the portal, and it builds all the stuff for you in Azure. And if you have Copilot for Azure, you're certainly going to be able to go and see that directly at portal.azure.com. So 2 sort of pathways that get you to the same starting point. And so we're going to talk about that. In this class, all the slides, I did a bunch of screen captures, and I went the route of going Azure. Like, okay, so you're an Azure administrator. You go in, you know what resource groups are. You create a resource group. You create this new object called a capacity. You put it into the resource group. You decide how much bandwidth you want to assign to that capacity. And it's really expensive. We're going to talk about that too. But you assign about the bandwidth, and then you go through a bunch of steps to configure Security Copilot. So I was able to capture all of those screens. I don't even know if I'll be able to capture those screens at all going forward. So I'm glad that I did. But that's what we're going to start with. So just really quickly, if you run into someone, they're talking about Microsoft 365 Copilot. This is licensed in the same way you might have an E3 license or an E5 license. And if you had a Microsoft 365 Copilot E3 license or E5 license, it would add the Copilot integration. Primarily, that's going to be with the productivity apps, Excel, Word, PowerPoint, Outlook, and SharePoint Online, and things like that. Things you're doing with email, productivity apps. We have a webinar February 14th focused just on that integration. This is a screenshot of the app. This is a screenshot of Microsoft 365 Copilot for Sales. So here's the deal. You have a Microsoft 365 Copilot license, right? So you have a Microsoft 365 Copilot license. Then they have a category of Microsoft 365 Copilot that integrates directly with your CRM, your Customer Relationship Manager platform. That's not my area of expertise. I know that it would definitely and does integrate directly with Microsoft Dynamics. I'm guessing that will be able to be extended through things like Salesforce.com, which is probably the most popular CRM out there, but I don't know. But that's what the sales features are. And then Microsoft 365 Copilot for Service, this is another SKU. This is going to be able to help you to create Copilot role-based agents that enhance the service experience. So this is going to be helping you with customer service. At first, I'm all, oh, that must be for Microsoft or things like that. So this is going to be the Copilot for Service product. There's a question in the chat. Does anyone know if Copilot for Organizations follows the advanced data residency settings configured with a tenant? When I look at Copilot in the ADR settings, it just shows up a hyphen under geography. Brendan, I'm going to go through the screenshots that I captured when I configured the Copilot for Security. And because it's for organizations, I can't 100% comment on where it's keeping the data for the service product versus the Microsoft 365 product versus the sales product versus the security product. But what I can tell you is, and I'll re-verify this when I show you the screens, I'm pretty sure that was one of the questions where I wanted to keep my data. And most of the data, it's going to be actually looking at. So wherever that is where it is. Hopefully that helped to answer your question. Of course, the best thing to do there for sure is to make sure that's not an area where you want to not be correct. I don't know why I did this. Every once in a while I do something weird. Today I downloaded HIPAA and I'm reading through the different controls and I'm all, oh my God. Like, I could barely even understand some of that stuff, and having to be in IT where you have to integrate and be compliant, that's like a gnarly job. So actually the Copilot for Purview stuff that right now is nested under Copilot for Security, I don't have any information, I do have friends that work at Microsoft, but they haven't said, hey, we're going to be breaking that out. This is just based on my experience. I'm feeling like eventually those are going to pry apart, and it's going to be Copilot for compliance, Copilot for security. But right now they're kind of integrated together. All right, so let me go. Okay, so there's an answer, Russ. Thank you, Russ. So that's Copilot for Service. Then we've got Copilot for Finance. So the sales, the service, the finance, those are subsets of a Microsoft 365 Copilot license. And they're specialized for those products that Microsoft have that focus in those areas. Now, the Copilot Studio, it's super awesome. I don't know if any of you are software developers. If you are a software developer, Microsoft recently announced the Foundry product. amazing. Eventually, I think we will definitely have webinars around that and webinars around Copilot Studio. I've just started creating my first chatbots to integrate for teams and channels. So we'll see how that goes. I got to spend some time with this, but this is really exciting. The difference between Foundry and Studio: Studio is for non-coding people. Foundry is for you're a coder, and you may still elect to use Studio even if you're a coder for some projects, but Foundry gives you some depth and insight into some customizations that are super exciting. So, whoops, went the wrong way. So you can see, like, right out of the box, Eric said, what is the basic level of Microsoft 365 that includes Copilot, business or standard? Eric, I'm going to have to find that out for sure, because I didn't research specifically what licenses are. But here's what we're going to do just for fun, just to see if we can get that. I'm going to literally throw that in to the chat before the end of this webinar and see if it gives us the answer. Michael just asked, what about education? Well, that's actually one of the other areas of Copilot is Copilot for Education, which has amazing things. So Security Copilot, where we're going to be focusing on as soon as I get through these next couple products, this is its own thing. It's amazing. This is like mind-blowingly good. And we have to be like what can only be considered the beginning of what this is going to be. So Microsoft Security Copilot, incredible. If you've been working with Microsoft products for a while, you're probably not foreign to the idea that, it's called Microsoft Security Copilot. You may also see it referenced as Copilot Security. Those two things are the same thing. I'm not even sure which one is 100% right. I'm going with this screenshot, so I'm going to say they'll probably land on Microsoft Security Copilot. Now, the Azure stuff, which is phenomenal, like just imagine if you happen to be an Azure admin out there and you're like, shut down all of my VMs. It just goes and shuts them all down. That's the kind of stuff I've seen demonstrated with Azure. And of course, you could be by resource group, by country, by tag, by something. You could put any type of KQL, Cousteau query language, query to run filters against anything that you're passing in there. But really easy, like prompt engineering, natural language models, just like you might, like if I was a manager of 42 IT amazing people, and each one was in charge of one of my 42 data centers, which would kind of be a dream job. And I said, hey, Jim, would you mind shutting down all the servers in data center 7? And Nancy, could you shut down all the servers in data center 5? We're reconfiguring the power. That's how easy it is. Like, I don't have to tell them, go to this rack, turn this off, the power button is here. I just go turn these off, turn these on. So I think we're seeing where this is going to be a complete time saver for Azure administration. But in preparing for this very exciting webinar, I noticed everywhere I saw Azure, Copilot in Azure, unlike security for Copilot, every time I saw Azure, it kept saying preview. So a couple things about Azure, and again, just to look at what this looks like. Eric's asking about pricing. We're 100% going to be covering costs because that's significant. But specifically on the Microsoft Copilot for Azure product, it's currently in preview, and they'll automatically assume that you accept terms for that. And also, if you're going to use Microsoft Copilot for Azure, you may have to open up on your network connections that you're running this. So probably on a jump box scenario, have the WebSocket directline.botframework.com. And I was trying to just like write JavaScript to try and see if I could just get that to push through, and I was not able to. So there's just a lot of stuff going on. I suspect that will get easier as we go forward, but right now it's in that stage. So some of the things that you're going to be able to do with Microsoft Copilot for Azure: resource management, cost optimization. I think there's a huge benefit looking there. Just Azure concepts, writing help documentation, API management, code implementations, just all kinds of things that we do in Azure that are kind of, sometimes if you're an Azure administrator, can feel a little, clumsy. Just letting Copilot do a lot of that heavy lifting as we try and understand all the options we have and to optimize those. So they've put out a really cool video series in Copilot for Azure. I've watched it. It's really good. They have some great demos in here. And it's not long. I think it's a 3-part series. Really, really good. Microsoft's been great about putting out series. I just attended a webinar on Copilot for SharePoint online with the user agents component, and it's just mind-blowing. So definitely something we're going to be up on in the next 5 years for sure. All right, another product you may have heard of, which is its own thing, is Copilot for GitHub. One of the things that's really easy about getting your mind wrapped around this as a product is they put out a really clear pricing landing page. So you get a free version if you have GitHub, and GitHub is free, so that's cool. But then you can get into $10 a month for Pro, $19 for Business, $39 a month for Enterprise. And so, with Enterprise, you're going to get all of the possible features and a lot of GitHub customization available. But you can see, this is its own product, GitHub for Copilot. There's a free version you just get because you'll see it as an icon appear if you're writing code, working with Visual Studio or Code Spaces. And then you can up from there where you're actually getting charged. I'm doing the $10 a month one just to try it out, and it's been really, really nice. I did a trial, 30-day trial for Enterprise. For what I'm doing, I couldn't tell a difference, but it's pretty much just me and my friend coding. All right, so this is a screenshot. The AI editor for everyone, it's pretty awesome. Imagine just being able to describe an application and Copilot for GitHub writes the application. It's not that far off. I'm still personally feeling very much that you should be able to read and understand the code, because I literally, I'll be arguing with it, maybe that's not the best way. It feels very much to me like a really productive, time-saving pair programming experience. That's how I would describe that. And then there was a question about education. I promise I didn't prompt someone to ask about this. There is an education product. So Microsoft's billing it in there, just on this landing page, as build supportive classrooms with Microsoft 365 education. So Jake said 2,000 completions, meaning Copilot writes code for you 2,000 times. I don't think so, Jake. I'd have to look into that. It's a great question. I think what they mean is, I think that you can ask it 2,000 prompts and it will give you 2,000 answers. But that is not 100%. I'm just sort of somewhat educated guessing, but definitely something you want to look into. All right, and then Copilot for compliance. Now, this was confusing to me because I'm like, oh, this is its standalone product. So back in the day, to go back for all you Microsoft 365 administrators here, as Office 365 started expanding its feature set and the cloud got so widely adopted, Microsoft was like, hey, we can't have the SharePoint team have their tools for compliance, retention, auditing for SharePoint Online, and then have the Exchange team's tools be their tools that they integrated in their product, and have that be Exchange Online be a different set of tools, and then have, when they came up with Teams, be a different set of tools. So they said, okay, they created something at protection.office.com, I think it was called the Security and Compliance Center. And they started abstracting things like data loss prevention policies, e-discovery, retention, labeling, all that stuff. They put it there, and then quickly, as they added more features there, they said, all right, we need to have 2 areas, security.microsoft.com for the security stuff, and compliance.microsoft.com for the compliance stuff. And although both of those have changed names and added tons of features, that's kind of where it is today. So when I'm looking at Copilot, I had expected this was the case, and I came on to this information that says, look, Microsoft Copilot for compliance. But what I found in digging deeper is these are features that you get at the Microsoft Purview Center, and they do work once you integrate Security Copilot. You can extend into the Microsoft Purview product as well. So that's just kind of an interesting take, and we'll see that in a minute. So I know that's like a lot of information just to even get started, but when I was researching this, I cannot be the only person who's completely confused about what Copilot actually is. It's very much like an umbrella term that in the same way you would refer to Azure. But from practical terms, as an administrator, you're going to be saying we're creating virtual machines in Azure. We're running static web apps in Azure. We're running scaffolded software as a service, or we're building out our infrastructure as a service with networking with Azure. So we're more specific when we're talking about the objects we're administering or creating, and Copilot is very, very similar to that so far from what I could tell. All right, so what are we talking about here? What about Microsoft Defender XDR and Copilot? Well, they're all under the product Copilot for Security or Microsoft Security Copilot, depending on where you land. So that's the first thing. And Microsoft Learn specifically, and by the way, the Microsoft Learn documentation, and right now Microsoft Learn has updated their online version that you can get to for free of their course, the SC200. And they have sections in there about Copilot that are extremely up to date. I was very impressed. And they, in Microsoft Learn, they say, look, let's get started with this. If you're learning about Copilot from an administrative or technical background, you want to be familiar with these terms: a session, a prompt, a capability, a plugin, and an orchestrator. Those are going to be the nouns that Microsoft is going to use when they're talking about these products. So I'm not going to stray from that. A session is one conversation within a context. A prompt is an interaction within a session. So you can be in a session and you can ask it a question and it gives you an answer, and you can ask it another question and it gives you an answer, and another question. All of those are individual prompts that are categorized as being part of the same session. So that's important to understand. A capability is something that Copilot's using to work the problem. Is it using the web? Is it using your private data? Is it using your products in Microsoft 365? What is it using? What is going to be its sources and tools and mechanisms that it's using to solve the problem? A plugin is a resource-defined capability. And right now, when we go into Security Copilot, we're going to see that you can extend Copilot, Security Copilot, into a whole bunch of areas and products, and I expect that that's just going to continue to grow and grow and grow. And an orchestrator is the entire process to produce an answer. So they give a flow chart. We have our version of the flow chart looking like this, and this is the flow. Very impressive how they're able to keep this down to this simple of a diagram, but keeping in mind those nouns. You're a user, you're the human, right? So you're here and you submit a prompt. You open up Copilot, it has a chat-like experience, you type something in. Copilot will use its orchestrator engine, and this just happens. You don't have to actually do anything. And it will look at the context and build a plan of available skills. Then it will execute the plan and get the required data to answer the prompt. It will analyze all data and patterns to provide insights. It will combine all of the data and context and model to work out a response, and then it will provide a response. Now, this all happens, you don't have to memorize this unless they put out an exam that's going to include it. But this will make even more sense in a moment when I actually do an example, because we'll actually see that they capture all of these different stages and expose most of them to you so that you can analyze what they did and potentially expand or go deeper or look into different things. So how do we get this ready? So the very first thing you need to get any of this going is you need to have a Microsoft 365 license if you want to integrate Copilot with any of your Microsoft 365 source materials. Microsoft 365, not Microsoft 365 Copilot. This is just, you need a Microsoft 365 license. Then, in addition to that, you need a Microsoft 365 Copilot license. Okay, so that's that. And then to use the security for Copilot, part of that product, you're going to need to supply to that product something that Microsoft calls compute units that they recognize as an object called a capacity. So what that means is you need a capacity. You have to have a capacity because that's the engine, that's the compute units that Copilot for security needs to do its job, integrating with all the different things that you configure. So what I did is I went to portal.azure.com, I created a new resource group, and I created a capacity, and I captured those screens. This is one way of doing it. Another way is to go to securitycopilot.microsoft.com. You get to the portal, and then you basically start that way. So I did this in this webinar, the Azure-centric way. So this is like a basic Azure resource creating form that you would get with a virtual machine or a network. You know, you have the fields that make sense for that particular type of object. But I went to the home screen, I did a search for Microsoft Security Copilot compute capacities, and I said create, and then they said okay, and they had me fill out this form. A couple of things to focus on. I named the form, and the name has to be unique, okay? And it can only contain lowercase letters and numbers with no spaces. So I just named mine a Copilot webinar capacity. You would have to be working for somebody that has a tremendous budget to have multiple capacities, although that is possible. If you were going to be working in an area with tremendous, any more than 2 or 3 capacities, I recommend thinking about a naming convention and sticking with it. This is the location. So this is the prompt evaluation location. So I believe that this is around the question that you were asking earlier when the students posted that to the chat about, you know, where, like being able to focus in on where your data is. But there's a couple aspects of this, right? So the first one is, this is where the prompt evaluation is located. Okay, so right now mine's in the United States. I did check the box. Hey, if it's busy, you could do it anywhere in the world. But if I was concerned with not having my data outside of the United States or whatever country I'm from, I would not have checked that box. I have no idea of knowing the impact of that because I'm just like one guy. So there's no real way for me to know. Definitely, this is going to be one of the places to look. And then it's going to be important for those of you that's really important that you verify with your Microsoft reps that will satisfy what you need. But remember, this is part of it. The other part of it is, what are the sources, right? What are the pieces that it's going to be using? Where is it looking? What data is it gathering in to be able to work out its response? And so if that stuff's already in a secure place, just in the country and it's all compliant, this should not violate that unless you say, like, check the box like I did, and all of a sudden my prompts are going all over the world. That might cause an issue with my compliance team. All right, and then this is the capacity region. So capacity is an object. Let me get myself out of the way, my big head right there. This is the part that was somewhat shocking, okay? The lowest compute unit that you could choose is 1. You cannot go less than 1 currently. By choosing 1, you can expect to incur $2,880 a month just from this 1 compute unit. And I got on the phone, not the phone, I did it via chat with a Microsoft support rep, and I'm all, so I'm guessing this is somehow running a VM in the background and I'm choosing my compute units by the size of the VM. Can I stop this? Can I say, no, I don't, like, I can't pay $2,880 a month, depending on what I'm using it for. And it goes up fast. Like I'll show you, like I'll make an adjustment to where like by just going to a couple compute units, 4 to 5 to 6, you're up to like 30, 40, 50 grand a month. So be careful. The compute units are calculated at $4 an hour. So when I was chatting with the whatever rep I got when I'm chatting, he's like, oh, you're only charged while you're using the compute unit. So I'm thinking, okay, while I'm using the product, while I'm in sessions, while I'm doing that, I can control that. But what happened to me is I'm monitoring the costs. I'm like, all right, I'm getting ready for this webinar. I've maybe been in this product, like actual like running prompts, putting together prompt books, stuff we're gonna look at maybe for 6 hours, okay? And it's every day, it's charging me $98. And I'm like, well, what? That seems insane. Yeah, there's a lot of, that's a lot of people commenting on that. It kind of caught me off guard. Definitely please find out what that actually means before you just start going crazy and creating these, because it could be a bad day at the office. Once you have the compute units, which go in a traditional resource group, the last step in the wizard will take you here. And you can say, you'll typically want to go here, finish setup in Security Copilot. And because I went that way, it took me right to the Security Copilot portal, which is at securitycopilot.microsoft.com. The first time you go here, if you've already created a capacity unit, then it'll say, all right, which one do you want to use? I only had one. I click the drop down. I hit continue. This is when I was saying I remember this being part of it. Your customer data will be stored in the United States. This location is based on the tenant associated with this account. And there's an article about Microsoft protecting your data, which I hope, excuse me, I hope is like helps. But if you think back, because if you think back to the earlier window just a couple clicks ago, I checked the box that said run these prompts anywhere in the world. And so I don't know specifically what data would be involved in that. So please be careful with that and make sure you're not going out of compliance. Yeah, so as far as the pricing, the pricing getting up to $28.80, I don't know, okay, how it's getting up to that expensive, because I'm confused by the pricing. I'm just showing you to please be careful of the pricing. I'm still a little confused because, like I said, at $4 an hour, if I'm in the product for 8 hours, as far as I could tell, that should be $32, not $300. Okay, so there's a lot that goes into this. Be careful with that. All right, and then they have this part about helping improving Copilot. Because I'm using this in development environments and not production environments for this webinar, I went ahead and said yes, I wanted to get better, so I did that. Okay, thank you, B. B just put in the $4 times 24 hours times that. Thank you. All right, and then Copilot's access and storage of Microsoft 365 data. All right, so this is something that, again, after it's set up, Copilot will integrate seamlessly with multiple Microsoft 365 and Microsoft security products that you've licensed. This integration will allow you to query directly. That's all good. The data is copied, processed, and stored by Copilot. So that's going to be really important. And then you can say, all right, choosing not to access and store Microsoft 365 data may be something that you want to choose. That's a switch that you can flip here. So if you look at the very bottom, it'll say allow Microsoft Purview to access, process, copy, and store customer data from your Copilot service. And that will be something that you can use Purview pointed against the Copilot data. I had it off and I flipped it to on, and that potentially could be why I'm getting charged so much. I don't know. I thought it was going to be where I'm just using it for 8 hours and my bill's going to be $32. There's probably a way to do that. I haven't figured out how to do that yet. All right, and then you have some Copilot usage, and they give you basically ways that you can set things up. So contributors can access Copilot, but Copilot responses will vary depending on permissions to Microsoft security products. Who you like to add, then you can go through and add and assign security roles. They've invented a couple of brand new roles specifically around Copilot, and the global administrator role and the Azure traditional owners role will be included, and they create their own group for that. You go through that, you're all set up, and this is it. I was all set up, and then I could start working with the actual product. The product itself is, I need to go up. Why are you going that way? All right, boom. This is the product. I'm going to do some screenshots, and then we're going to go have some fun. First off, across the top of the Microsoft Security Copilot portal, they call this standalone mode. So when you're in securitycopilot.microsoft.com and you're interacting with this user interface, you're in standalone mode. There's a light version, a dark version. I don't know why it feels like my themes always change for unknown reasons. All right, on the left, you see that you have prompts, then you have prompt books, then you have role, and then you have plugin. And then on the main screen, you see basically if you have prompts selected here, these are recommended prompts. I don't know specifically how they're making the decision of what to recommend to you, but there are recommended prompts, and it is scrollable. There's a whole bunch of them, which are awesome. You can get started that way. The next option is prompt books. A prompt book is a series of prompts put into a sequence that are saved. So check the impact of external threat article. This is a 6 prompt sequence. You can create your own parameters in your own custom prompt books. It's absolutely amazing. The role, and at first I thought for sure that the role was going to be referring to an actual security like Entra ID security role. That is not the case. This role is just the role that you play at your job, and then they use that as a filter against what prompt books or what prompts they're going to show you. Okay, so that's kind of how that works. And then, so the prompts, you just go in there, you start typing, and you can start working with it. After you've got everything set up, it's good to go. There's also on the right-hand side, excuse me, I went the wrong way. On the right-hand side after, so there's prompt books, there's role, there is a plugin section. So you can see that's what I mean. These are more of filters. Prompts will show you prompts. Prompt books will show you prompt books. The role that you choose will filter, if you're on prompt books, what prompt books it shows you. If you are on prompts, it would filter what prompts it was showing you. And in addition to the roles, it also has plugins, and we can take a look at that. So first off, just to use one, I went to prompts, I clicked use user password update history. When did user, and then there's a placeholder for UPN update or last change your password. It will automatically fill in that prompt for me. Okay, so they're trying to help you, and they have a whole bunch of tips in the Microsoft Learn content to make better prompts. And then you see this placeholder. That is a placeholder that Microsoft put in there because it's a parameter. So you have to type in a value there. Then it leverages that value. So I typed in able.austin@controlflowcorp.com, and it began processing my prompt. And this is where they break it down into steps that are completed to get your response and how long each of those steps took. And this is some very, very handy information. So if you do a lot of Microsoft PowerShell administration, you might find the fact that they use this namespace in authentication for this query to be very, very helpful. So there's a lot of good data in there, and then you can, go through and just keep doing prompts and asking whatever you want. Now, in addition to that, on the left-hand side, there's that hamburger menu, and you have My Sessions, Prompt Book History, library, and then owner settings, plugin settings, role assignment, usage monitoring, and some other steps. These are the plugins that are immediately available. And again, this plugin, it's not anything other than a filter that it will use in conjunction potentially with a role to decide what prompts or prompt books to show you. That's the standalone product. Once you've integrated Security Copilot, you can go into directly to security.microsoft.com, so the Microsoft 365 Defender XDR portal, and you will now see Copilot for Defender, and you can go through the, like the typical Microsoft wizards, like, do you want to see this? But ultimately, you probably want to get somewhere here. So let me move out of the way. Once you're in, so this is me in security.microsoft.com, and I think one of the more awesome surfacing of this tool is if you've ever done any advanced hunting using KQL queries to find things going on and you're researching incidents and alerts, you can go to advanced hunting, and if once it's configured, you will see this window for Copilot inserted to the right, and it will stay there unless you close it, and it will give you recommended prompts, which is awesome. As you click on a prompt or type your own prompt, it will write the KQL, the Kusto Query Language query for you, which is amazing because you can use this to fast track your KQL queries and get them just right using Copilot, and then you can save that and you can use it at any time in the future. So I see, personally, for me, this was like huge. My mind was blown when I saw this, how just powerful that it is. Now we're going to go have some fun, and I'm going to do some demos, but I have to remind you, please be careful about how much this can potentially cost. I hope that you guys find out that there's a way to like set it up and just stop, like keep it running, but just go only get charged $4 or whatever. I haven't found that, okay? So be aware of that. So I'm going to go to my demo machine here, and I am going to go to Security Copilot. So I'm going to go to not there, and not here, and not here. That's Azure. Here we go. So I'm at securitycopilot.microsoft.com. And right away, I've already configured everything. I could start prompts. I can filter the prompts by role. If I say, hey, I'm an IT administrator, I can click that, and it will reduce the number of prompts that are to be what's relevant for a typical IT administrator. Because I don't know if you can see this, but there's a lot of prompts here, and they're trying to help you find things that you want. A lot of this is just getting to know stuff, but this is an example of prompts. To run one, I'll click this one, device ownership. I'll click this here. It automatically fills in, show me the users, and I would have to provide a device name. I don't have any of those those memorized right now, so that's probably a bad one. Let me try another one. Devices by user. This is going to be much easier. Which devices are used by, and you type in the UPN. So I'll type mine in, spike at controlflowcorp.onmicrosoft.com. Boom. It's all okay. I typed in a prompt, and it is now going through that workflow that I showed you about before. And here it goes, and it's running. Jason asked, does this work with the government cloud? Hi, I don't know, because I don't have access to a government cloud to test it, but I'm sure that is a very quick question you can ask with Microsoft, and they will get back to you right away with that. So here is this prompt. Here's the results of this prompt. This is showing all the devices. I can quickly export that to Excel. I can click on this icon right here and see it in table format, and that's what it will look like in Excel. It's super awesome. You can see I've got Intune managed and non-Intune managed devices that will show up. It's asking me how the response was. I can download that, and it shows me what resources it used. So it used Microsoft Intune, and it showed me the managed devices, and then it's giving me a lot of visibility into what it did to come up with this answer. I can also edit this prompt if I want. I can change some of the different parameters that are available with this prompt to fine tune it if I want to, which is awesome. So you have a lot of flexibility in there. So that's just a prompt. So I'm going to go back to the home page, and I'm going to click on a prompt book. Prompt books are more than one prompt. So if I created yesterday this prompt book, And I decided to start a naming convention, CPB-001-logins. It's a 2-prompt sequence. So I click get started. That will open up that prompt book. Now it's saying, all right, well, the first thing you need is you need a UPN. And the reason that it's asking for that is because when I set up this prompt book, I said, let me see what login attempts exist for. And originally it populated with my UPN. So instead, I replaced in the actual prompt my UPN with this parameter. You put an opening square brackets and a closing square brackets and whatever you want users to see to tell them what to type in. And that becomes a parameter. So now I'm going to type in my UPN again. Boom, and I'm going to run it. I can edit this. I can add prompts to it. I can just continue to expand this prompt book. It's very, very flexible. And I can share this prompt book. I can include this prompt book with other people. There's all kinds of things that you can do. And you can see this is giving me a really, like a very intense response because I've obviously logged in quite a bit. And again, this is just a prompt book that I called CPP logins. I could put in any user in this tenancy and it would give me a response for that user. And I'm just going to click stop there. And that's where we're going to go there. Now that's Security Copilot. If I come over here to the hamburger menu and I click owner settings, these are some of the settings that you can pay attention to. You can switch capacity. Okay, so you can do that if you want to run against a different capacity. If you happen to be there, you can see that I have different compute units. If I click see usage, just on this this compute units, I'm not using it that much. Look at units used, 0.855, 0.368. These are not large amounts, and it's supposed to be a $4, but I can tell you it's definitely for me adding up to more than $4. There's probably a way around that. I just haven't figured it out yet. Now, once I have this up and running, if I go over here to security.microsoft.com. So this is the Microsoft 365 XDR portal, whatever they're calling. They keep changing the names. But anyways, I'm here now. And I'm going to go into this is my traditional XDR portal. I'm going to expand the hamburger menu. I'm going to expand hunting, and I'm going to go to advanced hunting. This is where I just think it's incredible. And because I have a license and I've configured security copilot.microsoft.com, I've configured all that. Right away, I see that I have this like it's inserted into the prompt engine right here. And you'll see this all over the different products that you integrate with. This seems to be the way they're doing it. You'll either have the option to do standalone or you'll be able to be right in a particular part of the product. And look, I could say find all interactive login attempts from Mac, from OS X Leopard. And it's looking at all of my sign-in logs and it's going to generate a response. But in addition to that, it should also update the KQL here. If I say run query, and if I was like, I wanna always be able to monitor who's logging in with OS Leopard, I can save this query right here and I can have that available to me all the time. Just that is super, super efficient. Now I'm gonna go back over here to Azure specifically. So I'm on Azure. We go to my homepage of Azure. And I'm going to go into my Copilot webinar capacity section here. I think that's the actual capacity right here. And I'm going to go to properties here. And this is where you can see this is the information. If I click view value as JSON, it is possible to construct Azure Resource Manager templates. I haven't tried to deploy any of these because it's just, I'm afraid, just too darn expensive to try and do that. But certainly for some of you that are working with major enterprises where that's not going to be a problem, you can use Bicep, Azure Resource Manager templates, Terraform, whatever works for you. If I click update security compute units, all right, so check this out. At the lowest I can pick is $1. If I move this up to not $1, 1 unit, 8 units, I'm at $23,040 a month. Okay, if I go up to 12, which means that it can probably be faster, I'm guessing, I'm at $34,560 a month. Let me very carefully lower this to 1. I wonder if I put it to 0 if it will just stop, but it seems to not let me out of there. But I just wanted to show you, please be very, very careful with that. All right, thank you for attending. This is our first Copilot webinar.